Hello, I'm going to tell you a story now which is relevant today, but which goes all the way back to 2001. So we're looking at something that happened 20 years ago, and we thought that it had been sorted out, or at least we've been told that it had been sorted out at the highest level. I happen to know that it hasn't been. I've happened to know this for some time, and now we're starting to get proof, and people are beginning to report that proof as if it's new news. It's not, I'm afraid. In 2001, my partner Necati Zontul took a boat from Turkey, and the boat in international waters was captured, waylaid by the Greek Coast Guard that peppered the boat with gunshot, terrifying the people in the boat, and then dragged the boat, towed the boat into a harbour in Crete, in Chania. There the people were taken out of the boat, they had their possessions confiscated, they were put in a makeshift detention camp, and in that camp my partner was tortured and raped. Now, it took 11 years for the case to finally get to the European Court of Human Rights, and we won. We won a small financial settlement, and many people saying, "Well, why bother? You know, oh, it's taken so long. He's happily settled in the UK now. Blah 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 blah." But it seemed to me that it was necessary to make the point that the Greek Coast Guard had behaved badly. Not only had they behaved badly, they'd also tried to cover up the crime. And the series of crimes. And in fact, I took it as far as the President of Greece. I went to see the President. I wrote to the Prime Minister. I went to see a number of people in Parliament. One person, ridiculously, I can't remember her name now, but she pretended to be somebody else when finally I met her. She pretended to be her own secretary because she realised that what I was talking about was not something she wanted to go on record about. And yet all the way around her office were pictures of herself with the great and the good, posing. I thought, well, you know, some secretary. So there were elements of farce about the story, but lying underneath it was a serious issue about human rights and about honesty. And as part of the resolution, there was an agreement that Greece would sort out its definition of torture, a definition which actually, unfortunately, we in the UK have a similar sort of definition, which blurs the distinction between inhuman treatment and torture per se. And they would also make sure that rape covered both the rape of women and the rape of men. And they would fix their treatment of refugees and asylum seekers. This was before 2015, when there was a huge wave of refugees coming from Syria, from Afghanistan, through Turkey into Greek waters. And Greece really has been flooded with these refugees. Now, in the last few years, it started to do exactly what it was doing in the early 2000s. And more than that, I note that the laws which Greece promised to put in action nearly 10 years ago, it's done nothing. It's done absolutely nothing. I am so shocked at the duplicity of their governments and people in those governments that I know personally. I'm deeply, deeply shocked. Now let's go to a story that came out. There have been a number of stories that have come out in the last 2 weeks. They're all a little bit behind the times because the Amnesty International released a document last year, and the NGO, a Greek NGO based in Lesbos, the legal centre in Lesbos, filed a case in October 2020. So we know there has been activity, and we know that people have noted that the sort of behaviour that led to Necati's torture and rape and detention is still ongoing, and it's routine, and more than that is happening in the same places. So the NGO, the legal centre Lesbos, took a case about a boat which travelled from the Marmaris Sea in Turkey with 200 people on it, 40 children, one pregnant woman. The boat was intercepted near Crete, oh, surprisingly. It was kept waiting for about 5 hours. Then masked men got on the boat, beat up these refugees, then put them onto two very flimsy rafts and towed these rafts back into Turkish waters, where eventually they were rescued by the Turkish Coast Guard. They could have drowned at any moment. They also, before being towed off and back into Turkish waters, they were stripped of their possessions and their documentation. Almost a mirror image of what happened to Necati. So nobody is learning from this, and I know people get on their high horse and say, oh, there's too many refugees. Each refugee brings with him or her a story of complete horror, and we are not human if we don't recognize that. Now, we may not know how to process all these people, but we should start with a principle of compassion and kindness for those people who are caught in this position, there but for the grace of God. There's a story today, or yesterday actually, about a 7-year-old girl called Helia Nazari. She was one of, I think, 20 asylum seekers coming from Afghanistan that were caught. Well, their story is extraordinary. Not only her, but there's a person, there's a fellow called Mohammed Nasir, who had attempted to leave 7 times, and 7 times had been pushed back. It's a technical term which is now being used about the Greek Navy pushing the boats back into Turkish waters, or pushing people who come across land back into Turkish territory. Now, Helia and Mohammed were in a group of 20 people who had made it all the way to Lesbos. There is evidence that has been recorded by an organisation called the Norwegian something or other. It's an organisation an NGO based in Norway, and there's a fellow called Tommy Olsen who has got pings and electronic evidence of these people arriving in Lesbos. There's also photographs of them on Lesbos. The Greek Coast Guard, some of the people in the Greek Coast Guard, as I know from all these, this is the paperwork that we assembled in 2001, I know that the Greek Coast Guard, there are 2 factions to it. There's the Greek Coast Guard controlled by the Greek Navy, and then there's a sort of secondary organisation of irregulars, and they're often the thugs who do all the dirty work, and they don't seem to be answerable to anybody. So in this particular case, Helia, the little 7-year-old girl, and Mohammed, the fellow who'd been trying 7 times to seek asylum, they were taken off the island of Lesbos, put on a boat, and ferried back into Turkish waters, and again left potentially to drown on this very insecure raft until they were picked up by the Turkish Coast Guard. Now, you've got to see this in the situation that we've got. The Turkish Turkey has taken on something like 4 million refugees from Syria and from Afghanistan, And I know there's been this sudden rush of refugees from 2015, and you know, quite a large number this year. I think 40,000 this year have come across. But we've now got a new element that we've thrown into the mix, because the US, in fact, Western military forces have left Afghanistan. And I imagine there will be a huge influx of refugees coming across Turkey, aiming for Europe in the next year. And we need to find a way of humanely dealing with this crisis, and pushbacks, firing at people in distress because they are foreigners. This is not only xenophobic, this is not only hateful, this is not only potentially illegal, even if it's considered acceptable, this is immoral in the darkest possible way. And legally, we received an assurance that this wouldn't be happening. We received an assurance that the law would change, and that hasn't happened. Now, of course, we're no longer in Europe. We no longer have the power to change things. We no longer have the power legally to change things, I think. We don't have that sort of moral thrust of sitting in the European Parliament. We might have a certain a certain moral license to be able to bang on the table and say, where are these laws you promised us, Greece? It doesn't help. It doesn't help that our government is not setting a very good example. It doesn't help that we have a Home Secretary who is determined to pursue similar policies. But maybe this is the point at which we need to sit up and be aware. Nothing is new, and what is happening to people at the moment has happened in the past. And we have to ask ourselves, is this right? Please, by all means, leave your comments and ring the bell to get more videos from me. I will try and look at issues which seem to be of interest, and maybe which are not quite making it into the British media. And I'll try, as far as I can, to give you background as well as opinion. So please, ping the bell, subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you later. For now, bye-bye.